I'm standing here in the Baviaanskloof in degraded thicket, and inside a plot that we fenced off in 2020. It's now May 2025, so it's now November 2025, so it's 5 years. We did plant spekboom in this plot, but the goats broke in early on and they ate all the spekboom, and we haven't been back to reuse this plot. However, look at all this ground cover. We've got this mesembryanthemum, which is a perennial, that is now become a very dominant ground cover. And having excluded the herbivores, so this is what it looks like on this side. Having excluded the herbivores, we're getting a lot of bounce back. So this is Diospyros capensis. This, if it was on that side of the fence, would have to be a tiny little bush in the protected by some kind of thorny shrub, and here it's growing quite happily. There's something else there. There's Cadaba aphylla, who's been completely munched to the ground, and the Cadabas here, I saw one earlier, are growing nice, and they're growing. They're actually putting on some biomass, and so part of spekboom restoration, or part of thicket restoration, we're obviously using spekboom as part of thicket restoration, is removing the animals, the herbivores that were, and herbivores were responsible for this degradation in the first place. But with the, so spekboom is used primarily as the vehicle of restoration for thicket, but it takes many years for there to be sufficient sufficient biomass to earn your carbon credits. However, here we are getting growth. Look, here's that Cadaba aphylla. Looks like some of it has died back a little bit, but there's a lot of growth there. Now there's growth. This Gruyere robusta is there's new growth on there, and anyway, so it takes a while for the spekboom to accumulate biomass, but there's all of this biomass that has started. This is a perennial mesum. It's probably an early successional phase, and we could consider it an early successional phase species. In thicket recovery, there's the Cadaba that's looking fantastic. And can we not account for this in the carbon capture? Because all of this greenery versus what's on the other side of the fence there wouldn't be here if we hadn't removed the animals. And this could be early funding or money from the carbon market in the early phase of a carbon project while waiting for the spekboom to get going. Here's this Cadaba looking pretty happy versus those very short stunted individuals that I showed you on the other side. There's another one over there. Anyway, if there was some way to easily estimate this biomass and what it's doing both in the above ground biomass and in the soil, for the soil carbon and above ground carbon, then this might pay very well for the early phases of a restoration project where you're using spekboom but need to wait for the spekboom to grow sufficiently large that there's something measurable or estimatable at a landscape scale. Anyway, just a thought that maybe we need to be doing carbon accounting more than just the spekboom, but be looking at the perennial cover that emerges when you remove herbivores.